Hello. The video you are about to see contains images of dolls only.
DeLacey, Hartran, you've been singing that song for days on end, and if you don't stop, I'm going to put parcel tape on your mouth. I swear I will.
No!
I will. Make her stop, Icky.
Icky won't let you put parcel tape on my mouth. Icky's my friend.
Icky's not watching what he's doing, or he'd be able to see we're live.
Oh, no, not again. Come on, Icky, darling. We'll sit down here. We've got to say hello. Hello, everybody. This is Lacey Lou back again.
Oh, finally. Now hurry up and choose what to remember.
Oh, that's easy. We want the story about the fairy fair. That's our favourite, isn't it, Icky?
Well, no singing, or I won't do a word of magic.
Oh, all right, all right, all right, all right. My son has got his hat on.
Magic voices fill the air. Magic memories take us there.
We can help Auntie Sarah Beth make all the ice cream. Boing, boing, boing. She says there's going to be 3 different kinds of ice cream. We're going to mix it all up. Boing. And there's going to be the biggest paddling pool you've ever seen. Boing, boing. And then there's going to be a big barbecue. Boing. And there's going to be all pretty fairy lights in the garden. Boing. And pretty candles on the table. And lovely yummy daughter's wishes food. Oh, and you just wait, Icky. You just wait. It's going to be really, really exciting.
Lacey, Hartran, just look at that hair that I brushed all nice and smooth for you. It looks like a dismantled haystack now. Oh, girls with dismantled haystacks on their heads can't go to paddle pool parties, can they?
Oh, no. But Icky and me want to go to the party. We were only having a little bounce.
Oh no, Icky, that nasty whiny brat's come back again. How did she get in here? Shall we throw her out of the window or just bundle her into the wardrobe?
No. No. Don't you dare put me in the wardrobe. I'm a princess again now. I'm a princess. And I brushed my hair all back smooth.
Much better. Now come on, get into bed or I won't have time to tell you a story. Icky, give her a kick to make her hurry up. We haven't got all night, you know.
No. Icky doesn't. Icky's my friend. You shouldn't tell Icky to do naughty bad. Icky's naughty enough. I know what he can be like. I want this darling like this. Tuck this in too tightly. But I've only got little hands. Oh, come on, Icky. Where's your pillow, Icky? Use a clean handkerchief under your pillow. Oh, come on, Buffy. Oh, Buffy, you nearly fall down. There we are. Come on, Bert. Give me your hand. Oh, come on, up your tum. Come on, Bert. Don't be so slow. Up your tum.
Oh,
Yes, I know. This friend gets higher every single night. That's what you always say.
well, it does.
There we are. And move this pillow so you can sit up.
There I am. Now then, what story do you want tonight? The Winged Dancers again? Rocco Rooster? Dr. Banty?
No. Do we have something new?
What kind of story will it be?
Well, something's about a little doll and fluffy animals and a magic place that nobody ever knows about but her. And it might have fairies.
My stars, you don't ask much, do you, Impy? Well, I'll see what I can do. I'm thinking I can tell you about a little girl I heard of once, and how she found a magical place. And it was all because of the fairy fair.
Oh, the fairy fair. That sounds so good. Now, come on, it's darling. Snuggle down. Please tell us, my Bert.
Well then, once upon a time, there was a little girl, and her name was Rosie.
That's a nice name.
Yes, it is. Now hush. She lived with her parents and her 2 older brothers in a flat on the top floor of a high block of flats, in a long grey street in a big city.
Oh, that doesn't sound very nice.
Well, it was okay, Impy. Rosie's parents both had jobs. Rosie and her brothers all went to a good school. They had plenty of food and good clothes. They had kind parents who loved them very much. They had nice toys. Rosie's brothers had a big TV and a PlayStation too. They loved games. But Rosie was different, you see. She loved to read. She loved books of fairy stories, books about flowers and birds. Although she had lots of nice things, she didn't like being in the city where there was no space and no greenness.
I don't think I'd like that either, mind Bert.
Now, Rosie was a sensible little girl. She knew that when she got old enough, she would be allowed to go out on her own, if she didn't go too far, and then she could take a bus ride to the Common, a wide place of grass and trees just outside the big city. There would be birds there that she could watch, and maybe flowers, she thought, and certainly lovely green grass to sit on and trees to climb. So, while she waited, Rosie saved her pocket money in a fat pink china pig, read her fairy stories, and dreamed of the far-off day when she would be in the country and see it all for herself.
Oh, I hope she didn't have to wait too long.
Well, she had to wait till her 9th birthday, Impy. When Rosie opened her presents the day she turned 9, she found a beautiful new book of fairy tales from around the world, another book on birds of Great Britain, and a stout little pair of walking shoes. "Now, Rosie," said her mother, "I know you've been dying to get to the Common for ages, and if Daddy and I weren't always so busy or so tired at the weekends, we'd have taken you ourselves long before this. But now you're old enough to go on your own. There are always lots of people about, so you'll be quite safe. Just make sure you come back on the 4 o'clock bus."
Oh, how lovely! Was she really excited?
She was, Impy. As soon as she had finished her breakfast, Rosie ran to her room and looked out at the sky. It was a warm day in early summer. The sky was blue with tiny fluffy clouds, so she thought she wouldn't need a coat. She carefully took the cork from the bottom of the china pig and shook out 4 50-pence pieces from the money crammed inside. 2 for the bus fare, 2 to buy herself an ice cream and a drink from the kiosk which was always there on the Common at weekends, she had heard. Then she put her new bird book, a bottle of water and some sun cream into her backpack, put on her walking shoes, said goodbye to her parents, and she was off.
Oh, wow!
It was so exciting to be walking all on her own down the street, then to be riding on the bus, sitting on the high swaying seat, looking out at the scenery. She had felt so grown up when she had asked the big conductor for a half to the Common, please, and he had given her the ticket with a smile.
I'd have been scared, mind Bert. I'd have been scared.
Oh, Impy, I think I would too. It was wonderful as the bus travelled on to see the buildings getting fewer and patches of green getting wider. Finally, the bus pulled up at a funny little shelter with a bench inside, right on the edge of a huge space of grass and trees. They were at the Common at last.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yes, Impy, Rosie didn't know what to do first, whether to go running across the soft grass, or to sit down and breathe the lovely fresh air, or climb a tree and watch for birds, or just start walking and see where she got before it was time to turn and head back for the bus stop.
I think that's what I do, mind Bert. I think I just go imploring. What do you do, Icky? Yes, he do that too. We go imploring. Wouldn't we, Icky?
Yes, Impy, but we're lucky. We only live in a little town, and there's country all around us here. But Rosie had never really seen it before. She did all the things in turn. First, she ran till she was all out of breath, and several people walking their dogs gave her some very strange looks. Then she sat beneath some shady trees by a little stream and had a drink of the water she'd brought. Then she climbed into one of the trees for a while to see what birds she could see. But finally she got down and began walking.
I bet this is where she finds something interesting and that's an adventure.
Quiet, Imp-Face. There is no adventure. That's the end of the story.
No. Don't be naughty. Don't be naughty or we won't love you.
Oh, Impy, what a thing to say. All right, there is more, but I can't do it if you don't love me.
Oh, of course we love you, silly. Of course we love you. We always love you, don't we, Icky? Now, come on. Give me one more.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course you're right about the adventure, Impy. Now it happened that after Rosie had wandered off down a narrow little path she had chanced upon, she noticed how quiet it had got. She noticed it so suddenly that she stopped to listen. Yes, it was true. Before, she had been hearing all kinds of sounds. The pattering about of dogs, the kicking of footballs, the shouting of children, people talking, even the occasional playing radio. There had been lots of people on the common. But now there were only the sounds of nature, the wind in the trees, the sounds of birds, and of a babbling brook far off. Rosie should have been alarmed, but she wasn't. She felt instinctively that there was nothing unfriendly here. She walked on down the path for a few yards and stopped, straining her ears. She had heard something else. Music. The thin, sweet, tinny echo of a fairground organ carried to her on the breeze.
Oh, goodness, this is going to be so good.
Rosie began to run. She didn't know why, but she was suddenly full of joy and excitement. She just knew that something absolutely lovely was going to happen to her. In a few yards, the music began to get louder. Rosie had never heard the tune before, yet she felt she had always known it. A few yards more, and she could smell the fair. Popcorn, hot donuts, roasting peanuts, hot dogs, frying onions, candy floss, candy apples, cinnamon, lemonade and coffee.
Oh, my, I want some of all of that. We're hungry now, are we, Iki? Don't you want some of that, Iki?
Oh, yes, Impy, there's nothing that smells like a fair. In a few yards more, Rosie could see it. She gasped with wonder. The tents were of rainbow-coloured silk. They sparkled in the sunlight. More rainbow-coloured bunting had been strung up on silver poles, and garlands of flags shone with rainbows, hearts, angels, stars, suns and moons. There were incredible rides, chair-planes in the shape of birds, a big wheel painted to look like a giant Catherine wheel, little pink and silver flying pigs that shot up into the air and whizzed back down at tremendous speed, a huge waltzer in the shape of a butterfly, and in the centre of all, the most beautiful merry-go-round, with, instead of horses, a wide variety of different creatures to ride on, a dragon, a unicorn, a swan, and more that Rosie couldn't make out.
Oh, I want to go there. I want to go too.
Oh, I wish you could, my Impy. Well, Rosie walked up to the little entrance turnstile. Standing behind it was a funny little man who wasn't even as tall as she was. He had a red beard, a completely bald head, and big ears like big round mushrooms. He smiled at Rosie. "May I come in?" she asked. She was a polite little girl, you see. She didn't just barge in. "How much does it cost?" The little man pointed at the sign on the turnstile, which Rosie hadn't read. It said, "Welcome to the Fairy Fair. Don't ask how much anything is. It's a penny. Leave your bigger coins here."
Oh, Iki, and Rosie's got a whole pound to spend.
That's right, Impy. Rosie gave the little man a big smile. Then she put her hand in her pocket and brought out her 2 50-pences, which she put on the little counter. There was a little spang sound, and there they were gone. In their place there was a little leather bag full of pennies. Rosie picked them up, put them in her pocket, and pushed through the turnstile into the Fairy Fair.
Oh, this is so good. I bet she had so much fun.
She did, Impy. Rosie didn't know where to go first, nor even what to look at. For one thing, the people inside the Fairy Fair weren't even, well, people. She could see little men and women like the little man she had seen by the turnstile, with bald heads and big round ears. The men had red beards, and the women big red eyebrows. There were some very slim creatures clad in green or grey, some tiny blue ones, and some who were obviously fairies because of their beautiful delicate wings. Nobody seemed to take notice of Rosie, except if someone caught her eye, they smiled. No one seemed to mind her being there at all. Pretty soon, though, Rosie began to feel very hungry, surrounded by all those lovely smells. The sight of a brilliant red apple just coming out of its candy bath caught her eye. She went over to the stall and bought one, and before very long she was enjoying herself thoroughly, having the best time at the Fairy Fair.
Oh, how lovely. We like candy apples, don't we, Iki?
I can't tell you everything Rosie did that day, Impy. It would take a very long time. But she thought it was the best day of her life. She didn't know that the real adventure hadn't even begun yet, and it wouldn't begin until she only had a few pennies left. I must go on the merry-go-round now, she thought. I might want more than one go. So Rosie made her way to the big merry-go-round in the centre of the fair. It was full at the time, and she looked at all the creatures as they came sweeping past her. The dragon, the unicorn, the swan, the bear, the Pegasus, the leopard, so many more. And then Rosie saw it. It wasn't a brave creature or a strong one, but it had such a lovely face, and she could almost have sworn it winked at her from its huge, beautiful brown eyes.
Oh, what was it? What was it?
It was a donkey, a little white donkey. As soon as the merry-go-round stopped, Rosie jumped onto the platform, put her penny into the hand of the little blue lady running it, and ran up to her donkey. Yes, he was just as beautiful as she thought. He looked so real. Even though his fur was painted, she thought she could almost feel it. He was white all over except for his big eyes and long dark eyelashes.
Oh, how cute.
Rosie stroked the donkey's head. "Hello, Snow Baby," she said. "You're so beautiful. I wish you could just jump off this merry-go-round. Then you and I could ride off together and have adventures. I would be your friend for always." At that moment the merry-go-round began to move again, and Rosie held on tight to Snow Baby as he began to spin round and round, up and down, with all the other creatures. The little blue lady who had been taking the money was walking by on the platform below, and at first Rosie thought she imagined what happened next. Snow Baby turned his head and looked at her, almost in a questioning sort of way. The little blue lady gave him a wink and nodded. Then there was a kind of grating, twanging sound. The next moment, Snow Baby had jumped off the merry-go-round and up, up, up into the air.
Oh, goodness gracious, did he have wings?
No, Impy, he didn't. I can't tell you how it happened. It was Snow Baby's special magic. He still went up and down like all merry-go-round creatures always do, only every time he went up, he took a big leap forward, not round and round any more. And I'll tell you another thing.
What's that?
He wasn't flying in this world either. Because, you know, if he was, can you imagine what it would have looked like? People would have looked up in the sky and seen him. They would have rung up the papers and said, "Look at that! There's a merry-go-round horse flying in the air!" No, Snow Baby had flown out of this world into a magic world nobody knows about, and only special people can get into. Rosie looked down from Snow Baby's back, and she could see the greenest country you could imagine spread out below her. Trees, fields, rivers. She wondered where on earth they would get to, and a little bit of her wondered how on earth they would get back.
There, he's supposed to come back on the 4 o'clock bus, isn't he, Iki?
Well, at last Snow Baby started to gently go down, and he landed in a field full of purple, pink and golden flowers, like beautiful little bells. It was the most beautiful place you can imagine, Impy. It was a long field with short, velvety, smooth grass, all these little flowers, some shady trees, a little river at the very bottom, and at the top a long high bank, thickly overgrown with some kind of creeping flowering plant that smelled of honey.
Oh, it sounds absolutely gorgeous.
It was. "Oh my," said Rosie, "what an amazing ride. I wonder where we are."
"Don't you know?"
said a little voice.
"This is the land of Everjoy." Oh, goodness gracious.
Rosie looked at Snow Baby, but he had his head down to the grass. He appeared to be nibbling it. He hadn't said anything. So she looked around, and what do you think? In the high bank at the end of the field, a little brown door had opened, and a fluffy head was peeping out at Rosie. The little voice was coming from there.
What was it, my bird? What was it?
Oh, I can't tell you now, Lacey loves. This is going on too long, and it's time princesses got their sleep if they want to go to parties after lessons tomorrow.
Oh, no, Bert. We want to know about the animals, don't we, Iki?
Oh, no, Icky. I told you we should have put that whiny brat in the wardrobe.
No. Oh, come on, my Bert. Please finish the story.
Oh, no. You can't get round me like that, Impy. Not tonight, you can't. Not tonight. I'll finish it tomorrow, I promise. Come on, it'll be all the nicer for the wait. They're lovely aminals. They're fluffy aminals. They're really gorgeous aminals. You'll like them, you will, you'll see.
I want them now.
But you can't.
We want them now. I keep it all on the basis. Oh, we're all getting tired, aren't we? All right. I have to look forward to after the party tomorrow night. Oh, goodness. All right.
That's right, Impy Imp. Pollyanna, Imp Face.
I'm not a Pollyanna. I am little girl. How many times I got to tell you?
Now, come on, snuggle up. It's time for the song.
All right. Goofy, lie down this minute. Oh. That's better. Now, come on now, eat door. It's time for the song. Give me your hand, Bert. Put your hands together with mine.
Okay,
That's right.
here we go.
One
Evening as the sun went down and the jungle fire was burning. Down the road came a pretty maid and she said, I'm never turning. I'm going to a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain, where there's peace and joy for each girl and boy. It's the big rock candy mountain. Oh, the birds and the bees and the lollipop trees, the ice-cold soda fountain, where the lemonade springs and the bluebird sings. It's the big rock candy mountain.